Hey everyone, my name's Jessie. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about my favorite books of 2021 so far this year. I was planning on doing this midway through the year, and it is a little past that midway point, but I figured better late than never. So here I am finally to share with you all of my favorite books that I've read, and I'm trying to kind of narrow it down because I've had so many great books that I've read that didn't quite make this list, and I know I'm going to do an end of year list that's all encompassing of like all the favorites. So I really tried to narrow it down to like my top favorites. So I'm going to try to go in the order of genres. So we'll start with fantasy books, then move into thriller/horror, and then contemporary. So I'm going to start with my top 3 favorite fantasy books that I've read this year. And I have to start with the remainder of the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. I would put Valor, Ruin, and Wrath all on this list. I did finish off that series this year and loved it so much. Malice for me was like a 4.5-star book, but then after Valor, it just kept getting better and better in my opinion, and Ruin had some of my favorite moments in the entire series in this book. It's just this epic fantasy story, good versus evil. It turns a lot of tropes on its head, but it very much feels nostalgic towards like classic fantasy with the chosen one trope, angels versus demons kind of thing. It's awesome. I love this world and I love these characters so much. So I had to put Faithful and the Fallen on here, and I'm holding up Ruin because I think that my favorite moments from the series are in Ruin, but the whole series is fantastic, so I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. Then the next one I have to talk about is a pleasant surprise. I was not expecting to love this one as much as I did, and that is City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. I love Foundry Side, as you all know, by Robert Jackson Bennett, so I definitely wanted to try his other series that came before Foundry Side, and that is the Divine Cities trilogy, starting with City of Stairs. This was actually the January Shelf Space book club pick, and I loved this book. I thought it was such a cool world. It kind of takes place in this world where it was created by these numerous gods, and one day the gods disappeared and it kind of left this world in chaos, and there was this one city that never had the assistance of any god that ended up kind of taking over this world. And so we pick up after this epic war has ended and kind of see the consequences of that war, and there's rumors that the gods may be coming back, and it's just a fascinating world. The story itself is very much a murder mystery. It's very political in nature, which I really loved, the political intrigue in this book. That's definitely a buzzword for me, I've come to realize, and I loved this book for it. I now only have the last book to read in this trilogy, and it's so fantastic. So definitely recommend, if you haven't read City of Stairs, give it a try. You may love it. And the last fantasy book I have to talk about is another one that totally caught me off guard, surprised me. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and that is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which was stunning. I loved this book for the world and how unique it felt. I had never read anything like this. It's inspired by the civilizations of pre-Columbian America, and it's just so cool. The world building is so fantastic, and the characters, oh my god. There are these 2 characters that I just fell in love with, and there's this romance in this book that I loved. I loved everything about this book. It was really fast-paced. I found that I could not put it down. The pages flew by. I am so excited for the next book. Oh my god. And the ending, I think the ending is the most hotly contested part of this book. A lot of people don't love the ending because it's very abrupt, and it almost like skips past all of the action that we've been building up towards towards. It's very interesting. I'm wondering if it's going to be addressed in the next book, so I would caution folks, if you're going to try this, the ending catches a lot of people off guard, but I personally didn't mind it because I just loved the rest of the book so much that the ending, I was like, I mean, it was fast, but I was like, I don't care. I ate this up. I just loved it so much. So Black Sun is definitely a new favorite for me. Okay, and now I have 2 horror books to give a shout out to. No thrillers right now, just horror. And the first new favorite horror book I have is Carrie by Stephen King, and I have it in this bind up here. Carrie is now my new favorite Stephen King book. It used to be The Shining, and now it's Carrie. And the reason I love Carrie so much is because I just loved the character of Carrie. I thought that the story was so engrossing. I couldn't stop listening to it. I listened to it on audiobook, and I highly recommend, if you love audiobooks, to check it out, because the original movie Carrie, I think there was a newer release, and it's the older version of Carrie, stars Sissy Spacek, and she actually reads the audiobook, which was such a pleasant experience, listening to her read the book to you. It was so compelling because Carrie is subject to the most relentless bullying and has this horrendous home life, and that was probably the most terrifying part of the book. I really don't find this book scary for any of like the supernatural elements. The scariest part of this book is the human aspect of it. The bullies, the mother. It's how Carrie has to deal with what happens in real life. I mean, real people get bullied like this, and it's so heartbreaking, and I just was so engrossed in Carrie's story and just wanted the best for her so bad. And if you know anything about the story of Carrie, I'm not going to say anything, but yeah, it's crazy what she has to go through and what she ends up doing, and I just loved it. I loved it so much. So definitely recommend Carrie. And again, I don't think it's necessarily the scariest Stephen King book by any means, but I just found it the most compelling, and just I felt so much for Carrie herself. So love that one. And then the other horror book I have to talk about is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, which is my second Grady Hendrix novel. And I loved this one so much. I mean, the title of it kind of gives away what it's about. It is very 80s nostalgia, definitely takes place in the 80s, and it's these 2 best friends who grow up together. One of them becomes possessed, and the other one has to figure out how to get her best friend back. And it sounds like a pretty simple story, but what's so fantastic about this book is the friendship between the 2 main characters is so spot on. It was almost like I was shocked that Grady Hendrix was able to so accurately capture this childhood friendship between these 2 girls. Like, it felt like he was writing about me and my best friend. Like, it was the same kind of thing that like me and my friends used to do. It was just so like relatable, and it was so perfectly captured, and I just loved the friendship in this book so much, so much. So I was so invested in these 2 friends, so that just made the rest of the book so good to me, because I cared so much about what was going to happen to this friend, and the things that the friends have to go through, and the exorcism is just crazy. It's crazy. I loved it. So I highly recommend this one, especially if you really enjoyed any of his other books. I read The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires and really enjoyed that one. So this one to me was even better. So highly recommend. All right, I have 2 nonfictions to talk about really quick, but I just love them so much. The first one is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I read back in January, I think, and I love this book. There are lessons in this book that I still think about every single day. It's one that I tabbed like crazy because there were just so many very insightful thing. It's very actionable, so it's not just talking about the theory of habits or the science of habits. It's talking about how can you actually apply these specific things to instill better habits in your life. And that's what I love about this book, because I can take lessons from this book and apply them today, right now, right this instant, and hope for better outcomes. And I think that that's fantastic. Any book that makes me feel like I've learned something and have something to apply and try to hopefully have a better life sounds great to me. So this one was fantastic. And then the other one was Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport, which is basically what it sounds like. It's about reducing the amount of technology and social media in your life to reduce negative consequences that come from the overuse of those things. So it's not necessarily anti-technology. It's not necessarily you can't be on social media. It's finding things that you value from those tools and applying them in a way that produces better benefits rather than negative consequences from those things. It truly changed my life. I still apply all the things that I learned from this book on a daily basis. I am no longer on Instagram because it was something that wasn't bringing value to my personal life. And there are a lot of people who it does bring value, and that's where he is trying to help you identify those things. If it brings you value, if it brings you happiness, keep those things in your life and remove the negative. So if you feel like you struggle with too much technology, too much screen time, too much social media, any of that, check this one out. Maybe you'll learn something. I highly recommend checking this one out. And then the last 3 books I have are all contemporaries. So the first one I have to talk about is Homegoing by Jashana, and I have talked about this one quite a lot, but I love it so much. It is this very epic tale of these 2 women who start off in 18th century Ghana and follow 300 years of not only their lives, but their descendants' lives, and how them being in 2 different places sets this trajectory for their ancestors. And what I love so much about this is so often, I mean, every book I've read has only ever followed one set of characters. And even if it follows those characters' entire lives, you still only follow those characters. What I love about this one is you see those characters' lives, but then you see their children's lives and those children's lives. And just seeing how important a decision that you make impacts not only your life, but a child's life and a child's life. It's just beautiful. It's such a beautiful story. It has beautiful themes. It has just the most amazing messages. It's just beautiful. So I adore this book. I love how it was told. I thought it was something that I've never read anything like it before. Stunning, absolutely stunning. So highly recommend this one. And then I also read City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, which was highly recommended from my good friend Jashana, whose channel I will link down below because she's fantastic. This is one of her favorite books of all time, and I'd been wanting to read it because she was saying such wonderful things about it. And so I finally read it in January of this year, and it still has stuck with me. It's still an all-time new favorite. It follows this woman who is growing up in the 40s in New York City, and that time period is so fun to read about, and the messages in this book about independence and being whoever you want to be, growing into your own and finding yourself, and it's just it's so beautiful. The characters in this book, the writing style, oh my god. I listened to this one on audio, and I know I'm gonna have to go back and physically reread it because there were so many lines that not only were just really witty and clever and made me laugh out loud. Like, there was a chapter in this book towards the beginning that I laughed out loud, like the whole chapter. I was laughing out loud. There are not many books that make me do that. And I love how clever and witty the writing was, but there were so many powerful moments too, and very quiet moments, and just, it was so wonderful how Elizabeth Gilbert wrote this book. I love it for its writing style. And the characters she creates just feel so real, so well realized. Thank you so much, Jashana, for raving about it, because I don't know if I would have picked it up without her recommendation. It was just beautiful. So love love this book. And the last book I have to talk about is a recent read, and that is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, another all-time favorite from this author. I still think Beartown is my absolute favorite by him, but Anxious People was so much fun. It was such a different kind of story, much more lighthearted than Beartown. That one's very heavy, but Anxious People follows this failed bank robbery, and the robber ends up taking this group of people hostage during this apartment tour across the street from the bank. And you just follow the story of this group of people, and they're all very different from each other. They're all very flawed, and you quickly realize that they're really not taking this situation seriously, and it's very funny and has a lot of really sweet messages, but I loved how witty and funny it was. Another one that made me laugh out loud. I really like books that can make me laugh, that can make me tear up. This one did it at the same time, so I love this one. I love the tone of it, the characters, even though they were extremely flawed, I really liked following them. So this one is another one that I highly recommend if you don't necessarily mind following some pretty flawed characters. Some are more flawed than others for sure, but it's very heartwarming, it's very endearing, and I loved it. So those are all of the best books that I have for you of the year so far. Did you see any on the list that would also be on your own list or that you really enjoyed? Let me know in the comments down below. And what's the best book that you've read this year so far? I'd love to know that too. So thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all next time. Bye!